The market is a strange kind of battlefield. It does not shout before it strikes, and it offers no mercy to the unready. Every morning, men walk into it with dreams of wealth glinting in their eyes, as if the ticker tape were a wishing well that responds to confidence alone. They come armed with tips, with rumors, with a handful of charts they half understand. They think profit is something to be hunted, but the market in its quiet indifference waits for them to reveal their impatience. It has no need to chase anyone. It only watches, and the unprepared, those who cannot think, who cannot wait, who cannot see beyond the thrill of the next move, are punished not by accident, but by design. It is not cruelty, though it feels like it. The market is not a man. It bears no grudge. Its punishment is mechanical, the consequence of ignorance meeting precision. Every tick, every candle, every wave of price is a test of one's preparation. Most traders enter believing they will learn as they go, as if experience were a kindly teacher. But the market does not teach. It charges tuition first. It takes what you cannot afford to lose and only afterward explains why you lost it. It is a classroom where the lessons are written in red ink, and the fee is your confidence, your composure, your capital. Those who last long enough begin to see the deeper order beneath the apparent chaos. They start to understand that the market punishes not the poor, nor the weak, nor the unlucky. It punishes the unprepared. It punishes the man who trades without a plan, who bets without boundaries, who reacts instead of anticipates. Preparation in trading is not about knowing what will happen next. It's about knowing what you will do when it happens. The unprepared trader looks to the chart for answers. The prepared one looks inward to his own behavior, to his own thresholds. But most never reach that clarity. They are too busy chasing, hoping, correcting yesterday's errors with today's impulses. They treat trading like a storm that must be outrun, not a climate that must be understood. They hear others say, the trend is your friend, but they do not comprehend what a friend truly is. Someone consistent, someone dependable. Instead, they mistake every fluctuation for a conversation, every rally for a promise. The market, indifferent and patient, lets them believe it, and then, without warning, it turns. What they thought was a friend becomes a mirror, reflecting the folly of their own eagerness. Preparation begins not with data, but with humility. It begins with admitting that the market owes nothing, that it does not care whether you win or lose. The unprepared trader walks in expecting fairness, expecting a pattern that confirms his beliefs. He wants the market to behave like a man, to be rational, to be just, to reward effort. But the market has no morality. It simply is. It moves as it must, guided by tides of greed and fear that no one fully controls. To survive within it requires detachment, not passion. And yet, most traders come filled with both. They think enthusiasm can compensate for ignorance. They believe conviction can substitute for skill. You can see them every day hovering over screens, refreshing charts, their eyes flickering like the candles they follow. When the market rises, they feel brilliant. When it falls, they feel cursed. They measure their worth by what happens outside them, never realizing that the true measure of a trader is how little the outside can disturb the inside. The unprepared man is emotional first, analytical second. He thinks he is trading the market, but in truth, he is trading his own reaction. The market merely provides the mirror. Those who have prepared do something the rest find impossible. They wait. They study. They watch. They allow boredom to pass without interference. The unprepared cannot wait because waiting feels like losing. They need movement to feel alive. They need confirmation that they exist in the flow of profit and loss. The market, sensing their weakness, offers them endless noise disguised as opportunity. It knows that impatience is profitable, not for the trader, but for everyone on the other side of his trades. Every impulsive click is another coin dropped into the market's collection plate. There is a reason why the majority fail, and it has little to do with intelligence. It is preparation, or the lack of it, that separates the few who endure from the many who vanish. The unprepared believe knowledge comes from prediction. The prepared know it comes from observation. One bets on what he thinks will happen. The other responds to what is happening. One tries to control. The other seeks to align. The market in its eternal neutrality rewards alignment and destroys control. Every losing trade, every account blown, every dream that ends with a margin call, these are not random tragedies. They are part of the same ancient ritual. The market takes from those who step inside it without reverence. It humbles those who believe it can be conquered. It breaks the hand that moves too quickly, blinds the eye that looks too narrowly, silences the voice that boasts too soon. And through this quiet destruction, it teaches the only lesson that matters, that survival belongs not to the clever, but to the prepared. Every trader believes in the beginning that the enemy lives on the screen, in the flashing prices, in the sudden reversals, in the cruel indifference of the market's pulse. But time reveals a subtler truth. The enemy lives inside. The battle is never between you and the market. It is always between you and your own emotion. Fear and greed are not emotions that visit once in a while. They are permanent residents in the trader's house. The untrained man thinks he can reason with them. The wiser man learns that he can only discipline them. Fear is the first to appear, and it wears many faces. Sometimes it comes as hesitation, that moment when the signal is clear, but the finger refuses to act. Sometimes it comes as panic, when prices fall faster than reason can process. Fear makes men sell too soon, close too early, abandon the plan that was sound only a moment ago. It tells them that preservation is victory, that small gains are safer than patience. But fear never speaks for protection. It speaks for limitation. It teaches traders to survive, not to prosper. Those who listen to it too long grow timid, and timidity is death disguised as caution. Then comes greed, loud, persuasive, full of false promises. It arrives wearing confidence like armor. It whispers that the trend will last forever, that this time is different, that the risk is smaller than it seems. Greed convinces a man that the market is finally his servant, that he has learned the secret code. It does not shout, it seduces. And by the time the trader realizes he has been deceived, his profit has turned to loss. Greed is not the desire for wealth. It is the refusal to stop once wealth is within reach. Between fear and greed lies a narrow bridge, and most never cross it. They swing between the two like a pendulum, never realizing that both are pulling the same string. Fear makes them doubt their method. Greed makes them abandon it. Both emotions disguise themselves as instinct. A trader says, "I felt something was wrong," or "I just knew it would keep going." In truth, he felt nothing more than the reflexes of a nervous animal. The market rewards discipline, not instinct. Instinct belongs to the jungle, not the exchange. The mind of a trader must be divided, calm when the world is frantic, detached when the crowd is euphoric. But detachment is the hardest skill of all. Most men come to the market seeking excitement, not control. They want to feel alive, taste the rush of winning, to escape the dull rhythm of ordinary life. They do not want to admit it, but trading has become a substitute for emotion itself. The flashing prices, the risk, the sudden turn. It becomes a theater where they can act out their deepest impulses. The market, sensing this need, gives them exactly what they came for: movement, illusion, drama, and in exchange it takes their composure. The prepared trader learns that emotion is a cost, just like a commission or a spread. Every time you let fear dictate a sale or greed delay an exit, you pay it in hidden fees. The unprepared trader pays with his entire fortune. The reason 90% fail is not lack of method. Most have read the same books, watched the same charts, studied the same systems. What they lack is mastery of the one variable no indicator can measure: the self. The chart reflects price, but the account balance reflects emotion. A single moment of fear can undo weeks of discipline. A single surge of greed can erase months of profit. That is the cruel arithmetic of emotion. It takes no more than one irrational decision to cancel 1,000 rational ones. And yet most traders treat emotion as if it were optional, as if they could outthink it, as if reason alone could hold the line. But reason is weak when money is at stake. Numbers can be bent by hope. Analysis can be twisted by desire. The man who believes he is immune has already lost. Control does not mean suppressing emotion. It means observing it without movement. The true trader feels fear, but he does not act from it. He feels greed, but he does not obey it. He watches the wave rise and fall, but his hand stays still. His strength is not in predicting the market, but in predicting himself. He knows his thresholds, his impulses, his weaknesses. He has mapped them as carefully as he has mapped the chart. The crowd calls him lucky. In truth, he is prepared. The crowd, on the other hand, is emotion made visible. It runs toward joy and away from pain in perfect synchronization. When prices rise, the crowd becomes a choir singing the same song of certainty. When prices fall, the same voices scream in unison for escape. A trader who joins that chorus has already surrendered his individuality. To follow the crowd is to surrender judgment. To trade without emotion is to reclaim it. The crowd acts first and thinks later. The wise act never without thought. Emotions are ancient, older than markets, older than reason. They evolved to help man survive danger, not to make him profit. Fear tells him to flee. Greed tells him to seize. Both instincts save lives in the wild and destroy accounts in the market. The irony is that what once preserved man now ruins him in a world ruled by numbers. To trade successfully is to rise above one's own design, to become the observer, not the participant. But the moment a man forgets that, he becomes his own adversary, waging war not with the market but with the echoes of his own primitive mind. The market has a way of disguising danger. It never introduces risk with a warning label or a siren. It whispers it through comfort, through the illusion of certainty. Most traders think risk is visible, that it appears in red numbers, in sharp drops, in volatile candles. But true risk is quieter than that. It hides in the slow days, the steady gains, the moments when everything feels under control. It waits in the shadows of overconfidence, where a man begins to believe that his understanding of the market is also control over it. And when that illusion becomes habit, risk becomes invisible. Every loss begins as comfort. The trader who wins a few times in a row starts to feel chosen. He believes his methods are sound because they worked yesterday, not realizing that yesterday's conditions were never a promise for tomorrow. The market rewards him just enough to make him reckless, and punishes him just late enough to make him think it won't. This is how risk enters, not through chaos but through repetition. It makes a man trust patterns that have no loyalty. He thinks he's building consistency, but he's only building expectation. And expectation, when mistaken for control, is the most dangerous position of all. The average trader measures risk by numbers, percentage losses, stop distances, drawdowns. But the experienced man knows that risk cannot be measured purely in arithmetic. The true magnitude of risk lies in exposure to one's own stubbornness. A man who cannot cut a loss has already taken one larger than he knows. A man who adds to a losing position to prove himself right has already abandoned trading for ego. Risk does not grow with market movement. It grows with denial. The market can move in any direction, but it is the trader's refusal to move with it that destroys him. The problem with risk is that it feels logical until it isn't. Traders tell themselves stories that this one time will be different, that they just need to wait, that the market will correct itself. These stories are comfort for the terrified. They sound like discipline, but smell like desperation. The market doesn't punish taking risk. It punishes misunderstanding it. Risk is not a villain. It's a mirror. It shows you where your assumptions live, how much you believe in them, and how blind you've become to their fragility. The danger lies in the gap between what you think you know and what you actually do. That gap is invisible, but it widens with every trade that feels easy. The more often the market agrees with you, the less you question yourself. And when you stop questioning, risk stops being visible. The unprepared trader believes the absence of loss is the absence of danger. But safety in trading is never measured by how well things are going. It's measured by how much you're prepared for when they don't. Most traders think of risk as a single event, a sharp decline, a wrong call, a bad trade. But risk is a process. It accumulates slowly, like rot beneath a painted surface. Every ignored warning, every over-leveraged position, every emotional trade adds another invisible layer. By the time you recognize it, the foundation is already compromised. And yet, risk never hides perfectly. It leaves traces for those who pay attention. Small inconsistencies, uneasy feelings, signals that don't quite align. The problem is not that traders can't see them, it's that they don't want to. Acknowledging risk means admitting uncertainty, and that is something few can stomach. The irony is that the market rewards those who respect their vulnerability. To accept that you can be wrong is the first form of strength. The moment you believe you cannot be surprised, you've already set the trap for yourself. The unprepared trader takes comfort in being right. The wise trader takes comfort in being safe. He knows that profit without structure is poison, that success without risk management is failure postponed. Every trade he takes is not a bet on being right, but a calculation of how much wrongness he can survive. Risk also deceives through familiarity. A trader watches the same stock, the same pattern, the same setup, and begins to think he knows it, as if the market has a personality that can be trusted. But the market is not a friend. It's a reflection of billions of decisions colliding in time. It does not remember you. It does not reward loyalty. What worked last month can betray you tomorrow with the same smile. Familiarity breeds blindness, and blindness is how risk multiplies in plain sight. Even more dangerous than external risk is the internal kind, the subtle emotional leverage that builds inside a trader. After a loss, he feels the urge to make it back. After a win, he feels invincible. In both cases, he has lost control, because both emotions distort perception. When perception bends, risk follows. The greatest losses often come not from the market's violence, but from the trader's attempt to repair his own pride. The chart may look the same, but his mind no longer does. True risk cannot be eliminated. It can only be understood, respected, and contained. It is not a dragon to be slain, but a current to be navigated. The wise trader accepts it as the price of participation. He defines it before it defines him. But most traders live in reverse. They define risk only after it has already taken something from them. They learn where their boundaries are only when they have crossed them. The market, indifferent and patient, waits for that crossing every time. It does not punish the presence of risk. It punishes the ignorance of it. The market is a stage where everyone arrives convinced they're early. Every trader believes he's different from the herd, that he sees what others can't. But the truth is more cruel and constant. The crowd is always late. It arrives not when opportunity is forming, but when it's already dressed and leaving the room. The market feeds on that delay. It thrives on collective blindness, on the rhythm of human reaction. What most call participation is merely following a trail already cold. By the time the crowd notices a movement, the professionals have already taken their profits and moved to silence. There's something ancient about this behavior. People do not trade for logic. They trade for belonging. They want to be right with others, rather than alone with uncertainty. The crowd's comfort lies in agreement, not accuracy. It waits for confirmation, for headlines, for the illusion of safety that comes from numbers marching in the same direction. When prices rise, they interpret it as proof. When they fall, they call it betrayal. In both cases, they are reacting, not thinking. The crowd's timing is emotional, not analytical. And emotion is the slowest force in the market. To understand the crowd, you must understand fear disguised as enthusiasm. When a stock climbs, the crowd doesn't buy because it believes it buys because it's afraid to be left behind. The rise becomes its own validation. Every tick upward seems to justify more faith, and the higher it climbs, the deeper that faith grows. But faith built on momentum is faith in illusion. The crowd never realizes it's buying what others are selling. The professionals are not prophets. They are engineers of emotion. They build the stage, set the lights, and wait for the audience to applaud before they exit quietly through the back. When the decline comes, it always feels sudden to the masses. They call it manipulation, bad luck, or a trap. They never call it what it is, their own lateness. They entered at the top of noise, not the base of silence. The same news they once hailed as confirmation now becomes accusation. Panic replaces greed, but both are born from the same ignorance of timing. The crowd cannot see the shift, because it never watches for silence. It only listens for echo. And in the market, echo always arrives after the sound has died. This lateness is not a flaw in individuals. It is the nature of collective psychology. The crowd doesn't think. It feels. It doesn't lead. It follows the weight of emotion. The market is the sum of those feelings expressed through price. By the time the average man acts, that emotion is already embedded in the chart. What he sees as opportunity is merely the visible surface of something that has already happened. He confuses information with insight, movement with meaning. He sees the wave but not the tide beneath it. The professionals do not fight the crowd. They wait for it. They know it will always arrive, desperate and loud, eager to believe. They know human nature has not changed since the first exchange of goods for gold. The tools are modern, but the instincts are ancient. Fear, greed, envy, these are constants, and the crowd carries them all like a disease. It wants to be right immediately, rich effortlessly, safe eternally. The market gives it moments of all three before taking them back with interest. There is something tragic in watching the crowd repeat itself, generation after generation. Every new wave of traders believes they are smarter than the last. They have technology, data, algorithms. They believe knowledge makes them immune, yet the same pattern repeats. Optimism expands until it collapses under its own weight. Charts change, instruments evolve, but behavior does not. The crowd still buys at the peak of hope and sells at the depth of despair. It still mocks the cautious in the boom and envies them in the crash. It still arrives late to every party and stays too long after it ends. To see this truth requires detachment, and detachment is lonely. Those who separate from the crowd are accused of arrogance in the beginning and called wise only after the collapse. But wisdom in trading is the courage to be early, to act before applause, to doubt when others celebrate, to sell when praise is loudest. The crowd cannot do this because it needs validation to survive. It cannot act without consensus, and so it must always follow the rhythm of others, arriving in joy, leaving in pain, convinced each time that the next trend will be different. The market has no loyalty to the crowd. It uses it as a mechanism to create liquidity, to generate volatility, to reward the patient. Every spike, every rally, every crash needs the crowd's emotion as fuel. The smart money builds the foundation. The crowd decorates the facade. When the noise grows unbearable, when everyone suddenly becomes an expert, when conversation replaces observation, that is when lateness has reached its peak. The professionals have already gone silent by then. They are not watching the same charts anymore. They are watching the crowd itself, knowing exactly when its cheers will turn to screams. And yet, the cycle continues. Because the crowd is not a group of people, it is a state of mind. Anyone can become part of it the moment they seek comfort over clarity, safety over solitude. The crowd begins where independent thought ends. It is the most dangerous place in trading because it feels so reassuring. It tells you you're not alone, that others agree, that you can't all be wrong together. But in the market, togetherness is the surest sign of delay. The crowd does not move the market. It confirms what has already moved, and by the time it sees the light, it's already standing in the shadow of its own reaction. There are two kinds of traders in the market, those who must always act, and those who can afford to wait. The first are many, the second are few. The crowd believes profit is earned through motion, through constant engagement, through the thrill of doing. They think the more they trade, the closer they are to mastery. But the market is not a place for movement. It is a place for observation. The greatest fortunes are made, not in the flurry of buying and selling, but in the stillness between them. The observer sees what the participant cannot, the rhythm beneath the noise, the pattern beneath the panic, the silence that always comes before the storm. To watch the market without acting is the most difficult discipline of all. Every instinct inside a man screams for participation. The flashing numbers tempt him like fire. When prices rise, he fears missing out. When they fall, he fears losing opportunity. In both cases, emotion becomes action, and action becomes loss. The observer, on the other hand, treats the market as a mirror rather than a battlefield. He studies it, measures it, waits for it to reveal itself fully before he lifts a hand. He understands that the market rewards timing, not activity. Participation feels like control, and that is its seduction. When you are in a trade, you feel powerful, as if your decision has weight against the current of billions. But in truth, participation blinds you. The moment you commit capital, you commit emotion. You begin to see what you want to see, confirmation instead of truth, hope instead of evidence. You stop observing objectively and start defending subjectively. The observer has no such burden. He can see clearly because he has nothing to lose in the moment. Detachment becomes vision, and vision becomes power. Most traders lose not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack patience. They cannot sit still while the market whispers its next secret. They rush into noise, hoping for clarity. They treat every fluctuation as meaning, every tick as opportunity, but the market moves in waves of deception. It lures the impatient with shallow movement before rewarding the patient with deep opportunity. The participant reacts, the observer recognizes. One sees chaos, the other sees order forming slowly, invisibly, until it becomes undeniable. Observation is not inactivity, it is preparation in motionless form. The observer is constantly collecting, analyzing, comparing. He watches how the crowd breathes, when it hesitates, when it screams. He studies not only price, but behavior, how people react to loss, to gain, to silence. The participant is busy executing. The observer is busy understanding. And understanding is what transforms randomness into rhythm. The market gives small profits to those who act often and large profits to those who act rarely, but precisely. This is the cruel paradox of trading. The less you do, the more you can gain, provided your waiting is purposeful. The observer waits not because he is afraid, but because he respects timing. He knows the market must complete its story before he can read it clearly. He knows that reacting too early is as fatal as reacting too late. Each day he watches is a day he learns something about himself, about patience, about how emotion disguises itself as urgency. The participant trades like a gambler. He must feel the pulse of the game. He confuses movement with opportunity, volatility with edge. The observer knows better. He sees that most market days are meant for watching, not for act. The true signal, the one that carries weight, rarely shouts. It hums beneath the surface, faint but persistent. Only those who have learned to listen to the quiet can hear it. The participant drowned in his own noise will never hear it until it's too late. Profit, in the truest sense, is not the difference between buying and selling. It is the distance between awareness and impulse. The observer expands that distance every day. He learns to see the setup forming days before the crowd notices it. He senses exhaustion in a rally before the chart reveals it. His mind becomes the instrument that measures imbalance long before numbers confirm it. The participant depends on price to tell him what is happening. The observer depends on time. Observation is also the art of emotional invisibility. The market feeds on reaction. It hunts those who panic, those who celebrate, those who reveal themselves through predictable behavior. The observer gives it nothing. His calmness makes him untraceable. He does not chase. He does not flee. He simply waits until the odds lean so heavily in his favor that action becomes almost mathematical. When he finally moves, it looks effortless, but the effort was already spent in the waiting. The participant must be right now. The observer only needs to be right eventually. This difference defines survival. The participant exhausts himself with constant engagement, burning through energy, attention, and confidence. Each loss feels personal. Each win feels fleeting. The observer, detached and deliberate, conserves his power. He knows that patience compounds just as capital does. He can outlast storms because he does not fight them. He studies their direction. In the end, the market is not conquered by aggression, but by perception. The participant lives in reaction. The observer lives in anticipation. One needs movement to feel alive. The other finds strength in stillness. The crowd laughs at those who wait, calling them timid, until the waiting one moves once and changes everything. The market belongs to those who see before they act, who act after they understand, who understand because they observe. The profits, as always, flow quietly toward those who are willing to do nothing until the time comes to do everything. Every trader believes at first that success comes from strategy, from finding the perfect system, the flawless entry, the algorithm that never loses. They build spreadsheets, test indicators, run back tests, optimize parameters. They think the market is a riddle to be solved by calculation. But the more time a man spends inside it, the clearer he sees that failure is mathematical, yet success is psychological. The losing trader is destroyed by arithmetic. The winning trader survives by discipline. Numbers dictate who fails, but mindset determines who endures. Failure is easy to measure. It lives in percentages, drawdowns, stop losses hit too often. It's written plainly on the account statement. You can see it forming like cracks in a mirror. Too much size on one trade, too many trades in one day, too little capital for too much ambition. Every losing trader, if he looks honestly, can trace his ruin through simple math. He risked more than he should. He averaged down when he should have cut. He traded a system that offered a small reward for a large danger. The market is merciless with such imbalance. There is no forgiveness for poor arithmetic. But while failure has numbers, success has none. It cannot be quantified because it lives in the invisible. Patience, restraint, endurance. Success is not built on how many trades you win, but on how many times you avoided acting when every impulse told you to. It is psychological because the real game is not on the chart. It's in the quiet space between decisions. The trader who learns to think clearly when surrounded by chaos becomes immune to the noise that ruins others. His success is not that he predicts correctly, but that he remains composed when the world becomes unhinged. The crowd seeks formulas, shortcuts, guarantees. They want to buy precision so they can avoid uncertainty. But precision without discipline is useless. The most perfect system will fail in the hands of an unstable mind. You can give two traders the same method. One will build an empire, the other will destroy himself. The difference lies not in what they know, but in who they are when money begins to move. One will follow his rules when they hurt. The other will rewrite them when they feel inconvenient. The market exposes not intelligence, but temperament. The mathematics of trading can only protect you from risk that can be measured. But the greatest risk cannot be written in a formula. It lives in the hidden corners of the psyche. The urge to double down after a loss, the desire to prove oneself right, the hunger to chase a runaway profit. These are not errors in logic. They are eruptions of emotion disguised as strategy. The trader who fails does not do so because his math was wrong, but because he refused to admit that emotion had replaced it. He knows what he should do, he simply cannot do it. That gap between knowledge and action is where 90% are lost. Success, on the other hand, is built on control. Control of self, of impulse, of timing. It's not about suppressing emotion, that is impossible, but about understanding it so completely that it loses its power. The successful trader does not fight fear or greed. He observes them as part of the process. He knows that every decision will try to disguise itself as logic, when it's actually emotion wearing reason's mask. By naming these feelings for what they are, he strips them of their influence. That is psychology turned into armor. Failure feels fast and thrilling. It gives you the illusion of action. The losing trader is always busy, chasing entries, watching screens, adjusting stops, seeking redemption. He confuses motion with progress. The successful trader moves slowly, sometimes not at all. He spends more time in silence than in execution. The market rewards that quiet. Every impulsive act is a tax paid to the unprepared. A patient observation is interest earned by the disciplined. Mathematically, every trader begins equal. They all face the same odds, the same structure, the same uncertainty. What separates them is not access or opportunity, but psychology, the unseen machinery of thought that turns data into decisions. The losing trader blames the system. The winning trader examines himself. The difference is humility. To win in the long term is to admit you will often be wrong and still remain calm enough to continue. Failure compounds through numbers, but success compounds through behavior. A single reckless trade can undo months of caution. A single moment of patience can save an account. The equations are simple, but the execution is human, and humans are flawed. This is why most fail. They treat trading like a puzzle, not a mirror. They think they're solving the market when the market is really solving them, revealing how disciplined, how patient, how self-aware they truly are. The market does not care about brilliance. It cares about balance. It rewards those who can lose without collapse, who can win without arrogance. It punishes those who confuse luck for skill or emotion for insight. Success is psychological, not because it avoids numbers, but because it governs them. The mind decides how much to risk, when to stop, when to continue. It writes the equations that mathematics later records. The trader who understands this becomes unshakable, because he finally grasps that the greatest profit is not made in the market. It is made in mastering the self.